I seriously almost did not make today's video because I just figured so many gun owners would be dismissive about it. But today I'm going to tell you about a simple exercise that you can do. It's so simple, but it will really up your chances of surviving a violent attack. But before I get into that simple exercise that will really up your chances of surviving, let me take just a second to remind you that it can cost up to $1 million to defend yourself in court should you get charged with murder after defending yourself against a violent attacker. So today's video is brought to you by Firearms Legal Protection. I use them myself, and for about the cost of a box of ammo per month, they give you everything that you will truly need after you have been forced to shoot a violent criminal in self-defense. As soon as that shooting occurs, you call their hotline and an attorney will immediately start heading your way to deal with the cops on your behalf. And if you are still arrested and if a bond is set, FOP will pay your bond to get you out of jail. And if your self-defense shooting ends up in court trial, FLP will provide you with an attorney to fight on your behalf. I will put a link down below that you can check them out if you want to, and if you use that link, you will get a discount when you join. So the reason why this exercise that I'm going to share with you is so important is because usually us good guys, we are usually behind the curveball. We are usually going about our normal everyday life, either walking in a parking lot, going to the store, or we're sitting at home watching TV or something like that, and then all of a sudden we are finding that we are having to defend our lives against a violent attacker. So what that means for you and I is that usually we are caught by surprise, and then when we are caught by surprise, we typically fumble. And when we fumble, when we are having to protect our lives against a violent attacker, when we fumble, we typically die. Now, when I first learned about this super simple exercise that I promise I'm getting ready to tell you what it is. When I first learned about this exercise was over 20 years ago, back in my old uniform days when I was a brand spanking new wet behind the ears police officer. And I had a field training officer and an experienced officer, because I was brand new, that I had to ride with. So every time that we would go to do a traffic stop, every time I would go to light that car up to pull it over, that FTO, that field training officer, taught me to say, what if he doesn't pull over when you light him up? What if he takes off on you instead of pulling over? What will you do? Put that through your mind before you even flip your overhead lights on to turn him over. So I would think to myself, okay, if I light him up and he takes off instead of pulling over, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to key up on my radio and I'm going to say, dispatch, I'm in pursuit. Here's a description of the vehicle. Here's the license plate of that vehicle. Here is our location, and here is our direction of travel. And so I would do that time and time again right before I would light that car up that I was going to pull over. And of course, 99% of the time, the cars would pull over for me and then the traffic stop would go like normal. But then after having played that what if game so many times, that very first time that a car did actually take off on me, I had already put it in my mind what I would do if the car did that instead of pulling over for me. So what happens with a lot of brand new police officers, and they don't play that what if game, that very first time that a car does take off on them, instead of already having that plan of action in their mind of what they would do if the subject did this, because that brand new police officer did not already have that plan of action in their mind, what they would do when that subject fled on them, a lot of times those brand new police officers would panic and they would end up screaming on the radio, dispatch, I got a car fleeing from me. And they would just yell and scream over the radio because they were so surprised and because their adrenaline was now shooting through the roof and they didn't have a plan of action already set into place. So something that's very important for us to remember is that we are constantly going through what's called an OODA loop. OODA loop. O stands for observe, you see it. The second O stands for orientate, you analyze what you're seeing. The D stands for you're going to decide on how you're going to act on what you just saw. And then the A actually stands for the action that you take. Now this is called OODA loop because every time something new happens, you are doing that over and over and over again. So what happens is when a bad guy suddenly pulls a gun out on you, again, you go through that OODA loop. You see that he pulls the gun. you analyze, you understand, you comprehend that that is a gun. Then you have to decide what you're going to do, and then you take that action. So the way that the what if game really helps you is when you think, what if, as I'm walking down the street, a bad guy suddenly comes around the corner and pulls a knife on me, what would I do? Well, I would immediately start heading that way, pulling my gun as I move, train my weapon on him and start giving him voice commands, and then fire my weapon if he advances towards me. And what that really does is that takes out a lot of your reaction time and really ups your chances of survival. So here's just kind of an example of how the what if game can help you out. So let's say that you are at a restaurant, and like any good self-defender does, you've got your back to a wall where you can see the front door to the restaurant, and you've also spotted all the emergency exits. So you can sit there and think to yourself, what if I see a masked man starting to approach the restaurant door with a gun in his hand? What would I do? So you can sit there and think to yourself, well, I would immediately get out of my restaurant chair and get out through that emergency exit before that robber made entry into the restaurant. Or as you're walking down the street, you can think to yourself, what if a bad guy jumps out from around that corner with a knife in his hand? What would I do? Well, I would do X, Y, and Z. That way, if it does happen, again, you've already got that plan of action in your mind, and you're gonna be much less behind that curveball, much less of a chance of fumbling and dying. So again, just by playing the what if game, what if this happens, what will I do, greatly enhances your chances of not fumbling when your life depends on it. So now I have a question for you. Have you ever been forced to defend yourself, and were you playing the what if game before that self-defense action? Or do you regularly play the self-defense game even if you've not had to defend yourself? Comment down below so we all learn from each other. And to learn a lot more about self-defense topics, click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn what most other gun owners don't know. Anyways, folks, this is enough internet for me today. I do need to get back to training. But folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.